Author Whitley Strieber told Jim Semivan on his podcast an absolutely bonkers story. Y'all, can't wait to get y'all's opinion. It's basically about a German guy, a baby, and an alien woman. That's right. Let's dive in and see what this is all about. If you're new to the channel, y'all, and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. Put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day. And of course, hit that like button, y'all. That really helps out the videos. So thank y'all so much for the support there, vetters. And of course, comment down below. What do you think of this story? Right? This German guy, a baby, an alien woman. I don't know. Right? Let's find out. Who is Whitley Strieber? In case you don't know, you're new to his story. He put out a book in the mid-'80s called Communion. Right? It tells of his own personal alien experiences. It was famously turned into a movie starring Christopher Walken as well. And Jim Semivan, he worked for the CIA for over 25 years. He was also part of the To the Stars Academy. That was Tom DeLonge's project, right, from Blink-182 with Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, right, Hal Puthoff, many other people. And yeah, they're on Whitley's podcast, and Whitley just drops this bomb of a story. So let's dive in and see what this is all about. Got it queued up. Again, as always, links in the description. Feel free to watch it without my commentary. Let's go.
When you're dealing like with what you had, you're trying to explain something that's probably happening on a level that is so different than ours, and so removed from ours, but we're part of it, but we just can't see it because we're blinkered. I mean, we could only see so much, smell so much, hear so much. Our senses are very, very limited. And I'm sure these others are sort of looking down at us and going like, my God, they're living, like little, and you pointed this out numerous times in your books. We're living like these little animals, like ants or cats or dogs or insects. We can't see anything.
Running around in our little burrows without any idea of the bigger world we live in.
Right, exactly. And but getting back to the original question, and I'm sorry I digressed there for a minute, but the reason I brought that up was because if indeed we are dealing with a presence that has the ability to operate, which I believe it does, in a time-space continuum that's different than ours, or dimensions that different than ours, they can bleed in and out, and they're basically playing games with us. Well, then we have a whole other kettle of fish here, because are they, we speak, from a human sense, we always want to judge. I mean, are they good or are they bad? Well, what if there isn't good or bad? What if they don't recognize good or bad? They don't recognize anything. They just do what they want to do. There is this trickster element to all of this, which is very disconcerting.
Yes.
It lies to people. It's deceitful. It never really explains itself. I think in them, you pointed out, there's never been one instance where one of these non-human intelligence ever sat down at a table, across them, it's like you or me or somebody else, and said, okay, here the hell's what happened, right? And let me explain it to you in your terms, what's going on. That's just doesn't happen.
But I think it could happen.
Hang on a second. First of all, like good and bad, the idea of good and bad is a concept that we have created as human beings, right? There's no, I mean, if we're being honest, like there's no essentially good and bad. There is what's accepted and what's not accepted, right? Essentially, so societally, right? And society has changed. So what has been deemed good and bad changes. It has flowed through the year, and different cultures, it's different. I don't think there's this universally good and bad. It's not that these beings wouldn't know good and bad. It's just they have their own version of what that may mean, what they want more of and what they want less of. That's essentially what good and bad is, I think, anyway. But, right, it's about lessening suffering, right, if that's what your society wants. Now, we may see that as that's good, but that's not like just in the animal kingdom, right? I mean, the circle of life is just about survival, right? Predators, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's it. But it is interesting to think about these entities, interdimensional, the way they come in. They can be evil, right? That's why the whole like CE5 sort of trying to contact beings, that whole thing always scared me, right? At first I was like, oh, let me look into this. I want to try it, and then I was like, nah, don't want to. Why take the risk? Why risk it? I don't know who these beings are, and I'm just going to risk trying to communicate with them and have a conversation. Even if they were telling me we're your friends, that sounds even worse, to be honest with you. That sounds like, some guy in a cul-de-sac with an ice cream, like, come to the back of my van. I got more ice cream. I mean, is that what these aliens are doing, right? Like, or beings or interdimensional, right? We keep talking about that. Again, I think it's definitely our best bet to consider these beings neutral at minimum, right? And who's to say that the beings that are showing up represent their entire species or civilization? Now, how do we know that? Look at the way Earth is broken up into small groups, right? We got continents, then we got countries, right? And then you got states, counties, cities, towns, streets, neighborhoods, right? Like, I mean, we break down into groups for all kinds of things. There's a UFO group, right? The UFO community, right? So who's to say that these beings represent their entire civilization? And how would we even know how could you even trust them? I'm just saying, it's interesting to think about all that. And what do they know? What information do they have that leads them to believe this stuff? That's all I'm curious about.
Because some of especially the little gray people, are very physical, at least at times.
Right.
And this is something that's hardly ever discussed. There are people, and I'm personally convinced of this, there are human beings who are somehow or another connected with them in a way that you and I aren't. Well, I could be, but I don't think you are.
Right.
I'm kidding. And I'll tell you, one of the stories in them is sent to me by a young guy who was
Here we go.
on station, I believe, in Germany, and he met this girl that he was just crazy about. And she reciprocated to his amazement, and they became friends. And it built gradually until finally they made love with one another. And it was a wonderful experience for him. He thought he'd found his wife. And the next thing he knew, she cut him off, wouldn't talk to him anymore. And then she told him to come down to her apartment. And she said, "You're not going to ever see me again after tonight." And whereupon he slowly turned into, before his eyes, sitting across the room from him, just a few feet away, a gray, and then turned back into her human form. And he was left thinking, my God, I gave an alien a baby. That was all it was about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you'd think that
Jim's face is like, Now, granted, Whitley's just relaying, right, that story that this person has told him, but said he was stationed, so probably a military person, right? That's what it sounded like. I mean, or a government official or something. So you have sex with this woman. She sort of ghosts you and then meets with you, and then transforms into this alien in front of you. But where did the pregnancy come out? How does he know she's pregnant? Why did he say, I gave this woman a baby? I mean, how does he know that? And let's be real, earmuffs, kids. Why isn't this dude pulling out? Right? Why isn't he wearing a condom? Protection. I'm just saying. Okay, we've all had our own experiences throughout life. you know, I'm just, okay, that's the fear, y'all. Okay, start wearing a condom, protection, pulling out, because you never know. You could give an alien a baby. But I mean, look, I don't know. Is that possible? Well, of course. I don't know anything about that story, any more details than that, right? But that seems interesting that these beings, and why would he assume it's an alien? Well, I guess you would. You see a gray, so he saw what he thought was a typical alien, right? Like the one that's on Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. It's got the typical gray face, right, with the big eyes and all of that. So he sees it transform into this being, which is interesting. Transform. What does that mean? Like you see the skin, you know what I mean? Like you see the thing more for it, like a flash of light, then that person's that, or like you see the bones breaking and transforming into the thing, right? And the epidermis changing and like the blood flow, and right, because you get your glow underneath your skin, right, and everything from the blood, right? And the way light reflects through your skin is from the blood flow, right? And all of that. So that's interesting how their bodies could mimic that. But I guess if they're transforming and they're beings here from another planet, like you would have those capabilities, I guess. It's not crazy to consider if you're going to consider the other part. But I don't know. Just find that interesting. And this seems like a lot to get babies from humans, right? You got to you got to date them on Tinder. Aliens are joining Tinder to get babies. Like, that just seems like a lot of work. Why not just abduct, get what you need, and, bounce? I don't know, right? It's like when we get semen from cows and things like that and bulls, it's not like they're like going out for a picnic with, a Chateauneuf du Pape and some charcuterie, and then, getting what they need from the bull. They just go for it. They lock them up and they do the thing and get it all done, right? Not to get graphic there, but so I don't know. It just seems like a lot of work to get one baby, right? You got to lure this guy in. It's like, that sounds like Species, the movie, a little bit, I guess. So I don't know. I don't know. The story, it just sounds interesting. I'd be curious. Look, no judgment. So if there is anybody watching this that has had a similar experience, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Not personally, please don't email me. But put it, publicly in the comments. And, I'd be curious. This is I never heard this type of story. I guess I've heard of them abducting and taking semen and eggs, and Whitley's talked about that, how we're like a farm potentially for that, some sort of like birthing farm here on Earth. I heard him talk about that on Weaponized with Jeremy Corbell and George Napa a long time ago. I mean, like last year. Anyway, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of work to go through for the aliens, but who knows their intentions, what they're doing, why they're doing it. Just seems like time-wise, but maybe time is different to them. I don't know. It just seems like a big investment. Like, if she was trying to keep her identity a secret, why reveal it at the end? She felt bad for the guy, letting him down. Like, she had an emotional connection, and then decided, you know what, I'm going to reveal myself, let it be known. Why go through all that hoopla at the beginning? Honestly, I think you might even have better luck just being an alien and trying to have sex with people, because I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of dudes out there who'd be like, oh, alien? I mean, that sounds great. At least try it, right? I don't know. Or vice versa, a woman with an alien man. I don't know. We're going off topic here. Anyway, I don't know. Curious to read the comments on all of this. Let's continue the story here.
This has to be impossible. It can't be true. I mean, what, how could that work? I mean, someone from another world, the DNA, the match of it's all crazy. It just doesn't seem possible.
Yeah.
But what if
The DNA matching. I mean, that's a good point, actually, Whitley. Right? It doesn't seem possible. Right? What about the DNA matching? Right? And just the fact they have DNA. Does that mean all beings have DNA, even intradimensional? I don't know. Again, I don't know. And now this alien woman has to carry around a human being baby, like carry it to term. Again, that seems like a lot of work. What kind of if this is your species and you're going to planets to do this thing, that's what you sign up for? Like, are they slaves or something that have to, these alien slaves that have to do this? Like, that seems like an odd service to sign up for back at your home planet, right? The military service. Oh, you're going to be on the front lines? You're going to be a med? What are you going to be a fighter pilot? One of our alien spaceships? No, I'm going to Earth to seduce men and get babies from them and then carry that baby out and have them. Oh, shit. Okay. Drew the short straw. I don't know. It just seems like, right? And why are the women having to do that work? Not to be sexist, I'm just saying. And aliens have two genders, right? Like they have man and woman. How do we know that that was a female alien? What if the men aliens have the babies? And so that dude just had, one too many screwdrivers, if you know what I'm saying? And he just thought it was an alien woman. But really it was Steve from down at the end of the bar. Next day at the bar is a little awkward, right? Like, oh, geez, what's up, Steve? About last night, I don't know, y'all. Look, I'm laughing. I'm giggling about it, but I doesn't mean I don't take it seriously. And if someone were to tell me their experience like that, that's a very serious experience. So we're just talking here, okay? That's all it is. So don't disrespect. But yeah, how does he know that that's a woman? Right? Just because they were a female or human woman, right? And then they're able to have the same, woman parts, right? And depending on how many times this guy had sex, maybe he wouldn't notice that it was a different. God, this is getting so crazy to think, I hope this video, how does he know that the woman part that he's penetrating is that, right? Like, is a vagina. Okay, let's just be real, right? Does he know what that feels like inside of one, being inside of one? God, I'm sorry, this is getting crazy. I gotta ask these questions. Right? Like, how does he know that? They're able to reproduce the same feeling or same whole, right? Like, God, I'm sorry to be saying these things. I don't know, y'all. I'm just saying, I'm just asking questions.
it is?
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, go ahead.
No, and maybe someone inside this deeply layered place that we call the defense community knows this.
Yes, they do. And I can tell you they do, as a matter of fact. The problem with that is
Hang on. As a matter of fact, the Defense Department knows about these abductions like this and having babies, or what does he mean by that? See, it's that non-specific answer that's interesting. Like, what are we talking about? As a matter of fact, they know. They know what? That story he told, or what are we talking about exactly?
our science, and we don't have a science of the soul, as you once mentioned too. We don't have that. And I think when you look at our scientific model, the paradigm that we use, it's just wholly inadequate to study this subject. And I know you and Jeffrey Kripal, mentioned, I don't know which one it was in one of your books, I think Supernatural, where you mentioned William James's version of a radical empiricism, a new model of science where you would look at the things that are, anomalous and strange, and then allow that in, and then figure out a way to research it and what have you. That isn't going on. It's going on, in little areas of places. But, one of the things that stopped funding for this years back, in this, probably I would say from the late 60s until probably even the early 2000s. Well, there were two things. One is when you were throwing money at a problem, the government has limited amount of.
Hang on. We stopped funding this. What is this? Alien abductions? That's not even an alien abduction, right? That's an alien sex story transformation thing. What are we talking about funding for this? Just UFO phenomenon general? That's why I just don't know what he's talking about, to be honest with you, a little bit.
Fun. So you're going to go after.
Let me go back.
When you were throwing money at a problem, the government has limited amount of funds. So you're going to go after what's the most important thing on your priority list. And it's always going to be terrorism or Russia or China or what have you. And then you're going to look at these other things like UAP and say, well, doesn't pose an immediate threat to us, and hasn't posed one to us. And it's one of these things that we don't really understand, and we don't have the science to understand. Are we going to throw $100 million at this? Because we've tried over the years and can't come up with anything. So that's.
Again, that doesn't make sense. It's not an immediate threat. But you just said, as a matter of fact, they know this stuff. They know that they're, having sex with humans and creating alien hybrid babies, or that they're interdimensional beings coming from another dimension. Like, how is that not immediately relevant and poses an immediate threat? What are we talking about? That is literally the definition of an immediate threat. So I just don't get it, right? What he's talking about. How can the Defense Department think both things? Well, we can't figure it out, so let's just move on. We'll just let these people come and create alien hybrid babies all over Earth. Like, what?
That's one thing where you say, like, well, okay, the funding, maybe we're not going to give that UAP stuff too much more. We'll focus on the national security. Can we extrapolate data from the downcraft and what have you? Yeah, I can see that happening. But the other problem was, a lot of people thought this was a demonic force that somehow we were dealing with, and that it wasn't very smart of us to, throwing a lot of money at something.
Hang on, let me reset it looks like the audio's off from the face there. Right, the audio's not synced.
Threat to us, and hasn't posed one to us.
Okay, it's just off on the video. That's not me.
And it's one of these things that we don't really understand, and we don't have the science to understand. Are we going to throw $100 million at this? Because we've tried over the years and can't come up with anything. So that's one thing where you say, like, well, okay, the funding, maybe we're not going to give that UAP stuff too much more. We'll focus on the national security. Can we extrapolate data from the downcraft and what have you? Yeah, I can see that happening. But the other problem was, a lot of people thought this was a demonic force that somehow we were dealing with, and that it wasn't very smart of us to, throwing a lot of money at something which really could have been, just not necessarily evil, but sometimes what's worse than evil is indifference, right? It's its own form of evil. And we've never really experienced, I don't think, a positive side to this, outside of the fact that you can point to some people like, Chris Bledsoe, who's
it's just going to get
life around. I mean, he's become a healer. What a wonderful man. And he, and it happens to a lot of people too with these experiences. They become very, very different people, good people,
healer,
more interested in things. But by the same token, that didn't have any effect on me. not that way. I mean, I was always that way. At least I hope I thought I was. But it did make me realize and understand that there are forces out there which we don't know much about, and that scares me. Doesn't scare me to the point that I stop living my life, but it gives me great pause when people will say to me, "Well, let's get the Ouija board out and do this, or let's make contact or try to make contact." Well, okay, but I always say go to that. And
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
yeah, be careful what you wish for. But if you want to go into it, please go in, but make sure you're well tethered to the ground, psychologically, number one. And number two, you have a backup plan. Because, remember John Keel made that famous statement.
I'm sorry, what? Have a backup plan? What does that mean? Be tethered to the ground psychologically. This is some advanced, right? Like, how could you even prepare or have a backup plan for something like that? Right? I just don't even know what that means. Like, have a backup plan. Like, what does that mean? I don't know. I just don't understand this, right? Like, I do get the part about, that's what I said earlier, right? Like, trying to contact these beings and do that. Nope, I'm out. If there's something there, I don't want to mess with that. Again, there is no way. I actually don't support that advice from Jim Semivan. I mean, do what you want with your life. I don't recommend it. Right? How could you, one, have a backup plan? How could you ensure that they're not effing with you? You can't. You can say anything you want. Well, all my experiences have been positive. Okay, what does that mean? That doesn't mean everyone else's will be. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just playing with fire, if you're asking me. You're just asking for it. Be careful what you wish for, like they said. I would not recommend that, especially when you hear experiences like Whitley's and other people's, right? They're not good. They would never have that experience again. So the idea that we then at the same moment have people trying to get that to happen, right, and have these experiences in contact with these beings, right? Because, again, that idea of, well, have a backup plan, again, I just, what does that even mean? What do you mean? What backup plan could you possibly have? I mean, you got a shotgun there waiting. I mean, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, what, are you tethered to the ground? You maybe you physically actually tether yourself to the ground, like, no joke, like you anchor yourself into the ground. But psychologically, like, how could you make sure you're psychologically able to withstand this? And let's be real, if they have those powers, it doesn't. There is no. If they want to take control of you, if they have those powers, they're going to take control of you. It doesn't matter how psychologically stable you are or not, right? If they have that power, let's be real. So. Yeah, I find that advice not, me personally, I don't recommend that. But again, to each their own. But again, how could you, one, have a backup plan, and two, how could you make sure you're psychologically stable to handle that? It's impossible. There's no reference. So no matter what you said about yourself or someone said about you, oh no, he's psychologically stable, it wouldn't matter. There is no way you can possibly know what you're up against and what capabilities they have, right? That's like saying America is indestructible. It's impossible. Nothing is, right? Like, there has to be a weakness somewhere. They would find it, right? So, I don't know. But I just find this conversation so interesting. They're just so sure of things, but in a general way, right? I don't know. Jim Semivan would be fascinating to talk to be honest with you. And in fact, him and Tom DeLonge just did a podcast that I'm going to be covering in another video in the next couple days here. And to be honest, I'm probably going to do a video on Whitley Strieber's story. Because that is fascinating. He's a fascinating guy, to be honest with you. He was a science fiction writer, right? He's actually from Texas, so Texas proud, right? He's a fellow Texan. So I'd be curious to hear more of his personal story. He became a science fiction writer. Some of his books got turned into movies. He started to write some stuff that wasn't doing so well, and then bam, all of a sudden he's got this book about these experiences. I'm not saying anything about the timing. I'm just saying it's interesting, right? How that happened, because the experiences came later in life. Most people will say, well, I had them when I was younger, right? I mean, not him, right? He's saying this happened in, I think, 1985 or something, his first one. And then he talks about other experiences in the 90s, right? Like late 90s and just a lot of things. And I don't know, just curious, both curious people. I would definitely love to talk to them about this stuff. If it's just speculation and hypothetical and we're just talking, I love those kind of conversations. But they seem like they're talking in facts, especially Jim Semivan. So that's why I just have all these questions, right? He's saying from a government perspective. And I pay taxes, man, right? We all do. Like, this is America. This is our government. Like, what's going on? If they know that these things are fact and are that serious, like, what the hell's going on? So anyway, let's continue. The clip's almost over.
I think it was in Disneyland of the Gods, which I think he really came out of that in the Eighth Tower, where he basically said, look, this is all, to me, as far as I'm concerned, it's all a big cosmic put on. You know, it's just a joke. And these things, basically, this phenomena isn't really a healthy partner. It isn't something that's it's giving you anything that's nurturing you in any way or explaining itself in any way or making things better for you. So I don't know. I mean, you could look at it both ways. I'm sure. I don't want to be narrow-minded about it, but I'm just very cautious about it. Some of my friends are not cautious. You know, Chris Mellon and I always talked about, you know, a few years ago, we had a really interesting conversation. You know, did we open up Pandora's box? And when we brought this out from the government, you know, and the answer, I think, is still up in the air. But his point was to me, and I think to you, your point, and I have to agree that this has to come out. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous that we're not discussing this.
I mean, that's true. I totally agree with that. You know, I do agree with that. We do need to be talking about this. You know, yeah, I'd be curious what y'all say in the comments, y'all, about this story, about what they're talking about, the conversation, right? It is fascinating. I just, again, trying to make contact and all of this. I don't know. So anyway, y'all, all right, I've done enough blabbing. Tell me what y'all think in the comments. Can't wait to read them. I hope y'all enjoy today's Sunday. Beautiful day today, going outside. So have some fun. Go to the park with the dogs. Hope y'all are able to do something as well. So we'll see you guys tomorrow, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, y'all. As always, remember, every day's a gift.